Well, good afternoon, everyone. We're so glad you're joining us today. This is a joint collaboration between my organization, which is PDK International. We are an education membership organization that runs a national career and technical student organization known as Educators Rising. And our special guest this afternoon is Christine Chmura, who is from Chmura Economics and Analytics. And today we're partnering to talk about the national teacher shortage. And we're really excited that you are here with us. For today's webinar, we understand as we go through today that you may have questions, and we would encourage you to use the Q&A tool here within Zoom to post your questions, and we will reserve time to address those questions at the end of our webinar. For those who are joining us and may want to share this experience with others within your organization, we will also be recording this and making this available through the Educators Rising website, the link of which we will share with you shortly. So without any further ado, I'm going to jump in and just tell you while you're up on the screen there, Educators Rising is, as I mentioned, a career and technical student organization. We have over 1,200 high schools with over 20,000 student members currently. We work with middle schoolers and high schoolers, turning them on to what it's like to be a future educator and follow many of them into our Educators Rising collegiate chapters and support them through their college experience as they major in education. And as you can read there, Chmura Economics is a economics consultancy in both Richmond, Virginia and Cleveland, Ohio. They have a footprint in two locations. And in today's webinar, they're going to highlight one of their premier tools called Jobs EQ. So my background, I am over 20-year educator, specialized in working in the K-12 environment, specifically around instructional technology. And today I am Director of Public Relations for PDK International and work closely with the team to promote Educators Rising. Christine Chmura, some years ago, founded Chmura Economics and Analytics after a career in finance and economics. She has made a name for herself and her organization throughout Virginia and the nation. And as you're going to find, their tool Jobs EQ is an incredible tool for many different kinds of organizations that want to make data informed decisions, especially around workforce trends. And you'll get to learn more about their product in just a few moments. To frame the issue around teacher shortages, 3 out of 4 districts struggle each year to hire enough qualified educators. What I mean by qualified is, yes, you may have an adult that's in the room. They may not have the appropriate teaching credential. They may be a long-term substitute. And of course, when you don't have qualified educators in front of students, ultimately students suffer. 50% of schools are understaffed. And that's a statistic that we found that teachers are reporting that their schools don't have the adequate number. And 21% of schools, because of the shortage, have increased class sizes. So while you may have a teacher in the classroom who is qualified, the student to teacher ratio may be such that learning is not optimized. And then 18% of teachers, unfortunately, report to us that they may not want to return to the classroom for the next school year. And one of the rationales for that may be because they are working extra hard because they have too many students in their classrooms. There can be a whole host of reasons, but we do know that that is sometimes reported as the rationale for why people want to get out. Our own organization we're now at our 57th year, and actually next week will be the release of the 2025 PDK poll. So for those of you on the webinar this afternoon, you're seeing some of the first results from this year's PDK poll. But we ask the American public questions each year relating to public education. And so this year we asked about teacher salaries. We've asked this a number of years in the past, but this year we have 1% of respondents telling us that teacher salaries are too high. But as you can see, the majority of 64% will say it's too low, and 20% said just about right. And the last time we asked this question was 2018. The numbers were slightly different, but pretty much the same there. But you can see that depending on political affiliation, those responses may change. If you are interested in our PDK poll, we asked questions this year about the elimination of the Department of Education. We have asked questions around the teacher shortage, around priorities for Americans in the public schools. And we also asked questions, interestingly enough, do you support the use of public funds to send your children to private or religious schools? So that all comes out next Tuesday, August 19th. And if you're interested, we are doing a run through all the data at 12 noon. In our last year's poll, we asked folks, would you support your child getting into the teaching profession? And sadly for us in the education field, only 40% supported their child choosing or pursuing a teaching career. And you can see on the screen there some of the reasons why parents may not encourage their students to get into teaching. Our program is billed as a grow your own program, meaning districts take on some of the responsibility to cultivate the next generation of teachers. Now, grow your own is more than just working with students. Grow your own can mean developing folks who want to pursue teaching as a second career. And so they may go through special training that's supported by the district in coordination, maybe taking some coursework with local higher education institutions to get teachers certified so they can pivot. Our program develops the teaching skills while kids are in high school. And we do that through a model where kids actually get to teach younger students while they're also taking CTE coursework to develop the skill sets needed required, not just for teaching, but for a variety of education careers. Currently, we have affiliations in 38 states. In those 38 states, that means that we have a presence and we have support for local conferences. So a CTSO experience usually gives students, as a general rule, practical experience in a future field that they may be interested in. Now, do 100% of our students all go into teaching? No, they do not. That would be the same for any CTSO. But if you think about giving kids experiences in school to really consider, do I want to get into a career? It's a great experience to go through because then they know that they really want to do it. We also host a national conference and we get to meet some of the students like you see there, who was one of our award winners. So our students, when they come to the conference, compete in various competitions related to teaching skills. And of course, it's a very invigorating experience. They get inspired and they get, of course, to meet one another who have common interest in education, as well as meet other teachers and experts to really get a deeper sense of what the teaching field will be like for them. Our approach for Grow Your Own is to support students through a 5C model. We have chapters in schools that sort of operate as an extracurricular support. We provide curriculum to schools if they're interested so that they know how to support the Education Career Pathway Program. As I mentioned, we do a national conference. There are also state conferences. And then we've built this thriving community of students who share this passion for wanting to get into education when they want to change the future lives of students in their communities. And of course, the competitions not only prove to students that they have these skills, but it can be a lot of fun along the way. Now, one of the benefits of our program is that we found when and you can see the statistics there, in a study done in Ohio, we found that 12% or more, I have to put the caveat why the little dot is there, the little star. We have a hard time in education tracking kids once they leave high school. We don't always get their email address or their phone number if they move or that type of thing. So in tracking students when they get to college is a little harder, but we know that at least 12% of students who went through the program in that state in a limited study went into the profession, which outclasses other CTE programs that require training post high school. So while that number seems low on the one end, it does edge out other CTE pathways. 80% of our students tell us that they're interested in education professions. And of course, that includes paraprofessionals, it includes all the other types of positions that schools have, from speech pathologists to school librarians to leadership positions, including principals and superintendents. And then 50% of our students intend to pursue teaching with going into college to study education. And one of the ways we support that is through signing days, just when athletes go off to sign up to play on a team in college. We also support that for kids who are committed to studying, majoring in education. Now, one of the products that we do offer schools, if they're interested, they do not have to use our curriculum to be part of Educators Rising. But for many schools, when they're getting started, especially, they don't know where to start. We provide not only the training that goes with it, but we provide a comprehensive curriculum that is supported through a set of standards that we developed with a number of partners. And that partnership was really important in developing a really good product. We are now getting ready for the 2025-26 school year with a brand new version of our curriculum. This is our third iteration. And so that's one of the benefits of subscribing and getting curriculum from us, is it's being continuously updated. And then, of course, as I mentioned, that comes with support for who we call teacher leaders, who are teaching the CTE classes in schools across the nation. Well, it's time for me to dive into a little bit more about the teacher shortage. And to do that, I'm going to pass it to our guest, Dr. Christine Chmura, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen and let her dig in and start to share hers. So, Chris,
Right.
I'll
Thank
pass it
you
over to
very
you.
much. Thank you very much, John. Some great information there. So now on my, hopefully you can see my screen economic overview.
Yep, we're
We're
set.
looking at, okay, great, thanks. All right, so what I'm going to do here is to first give you some national trends. During this presentation, we're focusing on elementary and secondary schools. We economists, our most up-to-date data is on the industry side. We'll start on the industry side, look at employment, look at wages, and then we're going to go down to the level that's really of more interest to you, the occupations. And in working with John, we've identified 12 occupations that we're going to center in on during this webinar, and I'm going to provide you a forecast for those occupations in terms of employment growth. We'll talk a little bit about emerging skills. I'll take you to our JobsEQ software that John told you about to let you see that. And then really, as you all know, local information is imperative. You can't use the national averages. Everything is different by region. We'll look at that a little bit toward the end. Some of the shortages, and then career and technical education in particular. It's so important that you are preparing your students for the jobs that are in demand, because they're getting those jobs and staying in the local area. So with that, first, an overview of employment in the industry. So again, we're looking at elementary and secondary schools as the industry, and you can see here that it shed a lot of jobs during COVID, 569,000 jobs, in fact. But right now, you're about 271,000 jobs above the pre-COVID peak. These data are through the first quarter of 2025. And the reason why it's a little more dated, it lags some other employment that comes out. The surveys come out a month behind, but these lag by 2 quarters because it's more detailed data, and these are data that don't get revised because it's about 95% of the whole universe that is being calculated, as opposed to the non-farm surveys that come out monthly do get revised, and as we saw recently, sometimes significantly. Here now you're looking at the same employment at elementary and secondary schools in black, percent change from a year ago. So the red line is zero. The gray shaded areas are recessions. So clearly, no surprise, we saw a great significant decline year over year during COVID. The black, the green line shows you all industries. And during COVID, employment in elementary and secondary schools dropped, but not as bad as all industries. Your decline was about 7.5% compared to 11.4% of all industries in the US. And the most recent data, we're looking at elementary and secondary schools growing about 1.3% from a year ago compared to 0.8% for all industries. So here again, sticking with that definition, the industry definition, now I'm showing you annual average wages. So annual average wages for all jobs at elementary and secondary schools in black, and green, all industries. One thing to note here, that we're looking not just at teachers, we're looking at everyone who works at elementary and secondary schools, including janitors, people that are in the cafeteria. And here you're seeing that at least at the beginning of this time period, 2002 quarter one, and throughout the whole time period, your average wages are less than total all industries, 11% below the total. And as we went over time, it was around 2006, the first quarter, where there was a gap of about 13%. And then after this recession, the gap dropped to about 10%. And then here around 2011, toward the end of 2011, it started to diverge. That is, wages in the nation for all industries were rising faster than those for elementary and secondary schools. And the gap here is around 14%, and the latest gap, 23%. That is, wages for elementary and secondary schools are 23% less than what the average industries are. So there you get to that item where John was talking about teacher salaries are too low, according to 64% of the people in the survey. And you're going to see more evidence of that as I go through the slide deck. And that is one of the things that is supporting or making this shortage of teachers um, difficult to overcome. So now on this slide, you see a lot of information. Let me give you some background on it. So the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, tracks about 800 occupations, detailed occupations by SOC code, Standard Occupation Classification, for those of you who aren't used to that. So first of all, as you look at these data, let's go down to the second last row here, or the last row, which is all occupations. So all occupations in the US, we have about 166 million people employed, and all the way to the right is the annual average growth rate expected over the next year. Actually, for the next 10 years, that annual average growth rate of 0.4 is what is expected. The average wage is 69,200. So here now, if you're familiar with SOC codes, basically we took the SOC code 25,200, which represents preschool, elementary, middle school, and special ed teachers. And they make up about 4.3 million employed people in the US. And we broke that out by three groups. The first group is teachers except special ed and CTE, and that makes up the largest number of employed, 3.6 million. And you can see the detailed occupations here. And then the second group is special ed teachers, and that makes up about 539,000, about 540,000 people that are employed within that occupation. And then finally, CTE, the last group, makes up about 120,476. A lot of data to go over. And so, as John said, you'll be getting a copy of this if you'd like to look at it in more detail. This group of elementary, preschool, middle school, secondary, special ed make up about 3% of the overall employment in the US. Now, a little more detail here. I'm going to start breaking this out. At the bottom, I showed you all occupations pay on average 69,200 in the US, and you can see the various wages being paid by these different occupations. There's only one that makes less than in the US, and that is preschool teachers, except special ed. are paid on average 42,000 for the latest data 2025 quarter one. Again, much less than what we see in the nation, but that is the only job that pays less than in the nation. When we look at the forecast, now I've highlighted in blue the one-year forecast. And first, I'd like you to focus on the last column, the annual average growth rate. Again, if we go to the very bottom, in the US, and this is employment growth in the US has slowed over the past few years and decades, and that's because of the demographic shift. We're not seeing as many people born here, and as a result, we're seeing slower growth in the labor force. If we look at the category of teachers that we're focusing on, that is expected to pretty much remain flat, actually inch down by 0.1% per year. We're going to need, on average, over the next 10 years, 0.1% less more teachers. That translates into a small number, 2,300 per year. And then I've highlighted in blue each of these specific occupations. 7 of the 12 occupations that we're tracking in this category are expected to see a decline, very slight, 0.1%. And then here's 0.2% for special education teachers in secondary schools. So that makes it look like, well, gosh, why do we have a shortage if we're not seeing much demand for teachers? And just to give you some background too, this annual average growth rate is based on how fast are elementary and secondary school industry growing. So because the industry is expected to decline slightly and because of demographics, then we don't need as many people teaching. Well, that's just the very beginning piece of the story. The second piece of the story, though, is here in this next column. I'm showing you transfers. So how many people do we need to teach in these occupations? Because some of these people are moving into other industries. And as John pointed out again in his survey, I think he noted that there are a certain percentage, and I've forgotten the percentage, that decide that are saying that they're not sure that they want to teach next year. I think the number was 18%. So some of those people are in this column. They're not teaching, but they're transferring out of teaching and going into a different occupation. And then on top of that, we have people who are exiting, completely leaving the labor force, and many of these people are retiring. So what we need to do to find out what the true total demand is to add up the exits, the transfers, and the employment growth, and here's the total demand. So you can see there is incredible demand in all of these occupations that relate to teaching going forward in the US. Again, this is an on average number for the next 10 years. So I'd like you to focus on this number at the very bottom, 304,000. So the total annual demand is almost 305,000 per year in the nation for teachers. So that's the number that we're going to focus on a little bit here. But before we do that, and again, remember that number, 305,000, let's look at the unemployment rate. So the unemployment rate in the nation for all occupations is 4.1%. For occupations that are related to teaching, preschool, elementary, middle school, special ed, CTE is 2.3%, much lower than the US. And there are some occupations that are even half as low as in the US. So very few people unemployed within the teaching occupations, again, points to the fact that we have a shortage here in the US. If we take a look at this by county, actually is what I'm doing, where we're looking at where teachers are employed the most, and clearly you can see that the darker blue areas are where you have the most teachers, and those are typically the faster growing or the more populated areas in the US. So again, just taking a look at this map by county, the dark blue areas where there are more teachers, the lighter areas we have less teachers. And just to give you an idea of how much different your industry is from others, you're pretty much all over the US. But when we look at most other industries, typically, now I'm showing you where all the aerospace workers live. Typically, they're clustered in certain areas. And that's because you have a lot of the manufacturers, the suppliers in those particular areas. You also have the training providers. And so we tend to see clustering of industries as opposed to, of course, education, where everyone needs educators within their region to educate the population. So let's get back to that number that we were supposed to remember, the 350,000. So question is supply meeting demand? And so what I did is I went into that SOC code of 25200. So this is the education related SOC code. And I looked at all of the awards when people graduate and they get an award. It's something called a SIP code, the Curriculum Instructional Program. They have to identify related to occupations. And so when I looked at all the awards that were granted in 2023, I saw that there were 492,000 education degrees awarded for a four-year degree and higher that were linked to this SOC code that is related to the education occupation. So from that perspective, 492,000, that's the pipeline of workers that we're getting every year. So clearly it seems like that there should not be a shortage because we have 350,000 that we're seeing we need on an annual basis in the US. When we look at the largest areas, the fastest growing areas, again, we're seeing quite a few awards in these large areas and the areas that are growing quickly. And so again, this gives us some more support that we really shouldn't have the shortage that we're seeing right now. But there's an issue with our methodology because just because you get a degree in a SIP code, it's an instructional program where you can become a teacher, you do not necessarily become a teacher. And a great example is registered nurses. So if you get a degree as a registered nurse in the SIP program, you're going to become a registered nurse. There's a simple linkage between the instructional program and the occupation. But in this case, there's not a simple linkage between the program awards for school teachers and actually becoming a school teacher. This is an example here where general economics is one of the degrees that teachers get before becoming a teacher. However, you can see here that the average wage for someone to become a teacher with general economics is about 76,000. However, if they were to go on and become an economist or work as a manager once becoming an economist, or even survey research or a teacher post-secondary, they would make more money than they would as a secondary school teacher. So again, part of the issue that we're looking at that clearly the survey John referenced earlier points out is teacher salaries are too low. One other slide that shows you some information about that is teacher salaries here by those particular occupations that we're focusing on. Here's the mean salary, the entry level, and experience, and then I'm showing you by percentile. So 29,000, and then the 90 percentile is 60,000. Here for special education teachers, all other, the 10% percentile is 42,000, rises to 110. So clearly there is some very nice upward movement. Here I'm showing you all occupations go from 30 to 124. So to put that into perspective, yes, we are seeing an increase, and I'm showing the ratio going from 10% to 90%. Some increase, but not nearly the increase that we're seeing in the US. So once again, here I'm arguing that we need to be paying teachers more. And then a couple of other items before we close here and open for questions is shifting gears towards skills. So within our jobs EQ, we have job postings. We also have resume data. And so when we're looking at that information, and when I looked at this general occupation of teachers, I found that the top overall skill, so we're looking at job postings and what skills are institutions requiring um, those teachers to have. And the top skill is teaching, training, school, which makes sense. The fastest growing skill is photography. A lot of growth, but it started at a very low number. And then the fastest declining skill here again is the teaching and training. So when we go to Salary Sonar, here you can see the information that I pulled on elementary and secondary school teachers. So median wage, according to the latest data, which is as of yesterday, wages are up 4%. This is for the nation overall. Job postings are down 15% from a year ago. The number of candidates we have online and the time to fill is 50 days, which gives us a sense of how hard it is to fill these jobs. Um, Going down below, we can see some of the more cost-effective regions. If you're trying to hire um, teachers and keep the wages low, especially if you're transferring or paying for someone to move, you can see some of the cost-effective regions. And then on the right, the ease of hiring. So how easy is it to hire based on the number of job postings relative to the number of resumes that are sitting out there. So the easier place to hire are in the darker areas. It's harder in the lighter areas. And again, so you see the lighter areas where we saw the fast growing regions as well as the highly populated areas, and the same within the Northeast. Um, Talent flow is something that's interesting too as well. If you're finding that there are certain institutions that provide good training for you to then, I don't want to say poach, but this is the way I guess hire people from. Here we see Learning Care Group. Based on resumes, we find that 2% of the people that they employ end up from Academy Sports. I thought it was interesting that 2% also come from Bed Bath and Beyond. So these most likely are people that perhaps they're in school, getting educated, and part-time working at Bed Bath and Beyond. But after working at Learning Care Group, um, often they go to, or 2% go to Liberty University, and you can see the other places where those individuals end up. The salary benchmark is important. So here I put, let's say my budget is 50,000. That's the amount of money I have based on the budget that has been given to me by the county or maybe the board of directors. And so when I look at um, the what that salary would buy, it's actually below the median salary of 58,000. So I can use this information to inform my board or to inform the municipality that I need more money in my budget to hire these people. Here you can see the median salary of this particular occupations going up over time, and then by experience. So once again, if if my board or my um, principal or the people that I work for are pushing me to hire people with more experience, then I can show them, if you want someone with 7 years experience, then I'm going to need a midpoint of 70,000. 50,000 is not going to do for me. So again, some good information just to help you to support your needs from a budget perspective. And then finally, when you do finally start to look for the candidates, here you can see we're looking at resumes at this point. There are 75,000 resumes for elementary school teachers. That's the job title that's most prevalent among this group that we're looking at. The Department of Education from New York City is where most of them are from. Most live in the region of Los Angeles. And then here we can just click on this information and it would take us to, okay, one of the Tim Mueller is one of the teachers that are in this database. Although he's not looking for a job, we may want to prospect him and see if he would be willing to move to our location. So going back then to the slide presentation, um, let me get back there. And I'm having a hard time figuring out how to do that, but
I'd minimize your browser. It's probably behind it.
okay. Thank you, John. That was it. Perfect. Thanks. Okay, so another thing that I think is helpful is to be able to look at job posts to help identify the demand by region and where we may have a shortage. Here you're looking at job posts for education occupations. The blue is this year and the gray is last year, and we're looking at it over time. And then here, I'm going to take you back to our Jobs EQ tool, and it's actually not showing up. Let me just get in there, and you can see the background on Jobs EQ here. And I'm going to, these are all the analytics. Let me go to Talent Watch. And here I have some queries that one that I saved, which is the teachers, that SOC code, again, that gives us those general occupations. And we're looking at the US, back to the insights page, and job postings are down 10% from a year ago. 50 days to hire, that's about the same as last year. The median wage going up 6%. And again, this is for the US, the slide that I just showed you. However, just to show you that it does vary by region, I'm going to Abilene, Texas. Let me get rid of the US and let me run this. And here their job postings are up 100%. The median wage actually down 3%. The time to fill is 38 compared to 50 in the US. And here you see the data for this year. It is slowing. The numbers are not as great as, of course, what we're seeing in the US. But there are regions that are showing growth as opposed to an expected slowing. And some of the differences in terms of the lines that we're looking at from last year versus this year may be a difference in uh, the starting week, and when we're seeing different districts put job ads out there. So back to the ending of the presentation here, ending with CTE. So career and technical education curriculum is extremely important um, because of all the variation in where people are living, what is in demand in that region. And here to emphasize that, I'm showing you machinists by county. Uh, in the darker blue area is where we see most of the machinists. In the lighter area, there are less machinists employed. So clearly, in these dark blue areas, it's important for CTE schools to make sure that machinist is top on the list of skills that kids are being given before they leave. And then here, um, just to show you, we do have Alaska and Hawaii in our database because it's harder to show a map with Alaska and Hawaii. I did leave those out, so sorry for those of you from those two areas, but I wanted to end with something from one of those two regions. So here we have a Perkins 5 report. Those of you in CTE know that you have to provide information every couple of years on the fact that you are providing occupations or skills for the occupations that are in demand. And so here is a report that we have that at the top shows you um, those occupations that are growing, and those occupations, these are rank ordered by growth. And then at the bottom, those occupations in demand that are declining. And because of it's important as well to know which occupations are at risk. So some of these occupations require only a high school degree. Others require more than that. For example, the nurse practitioner, a master's degree. And we provide this information to CTE because even though they're looking at what occupations or what skills are in demand for firms hiring in the area right out of high school. They're also looking at providing information for those students who want to go on afterward, after they get those jobs and further their degrees in education. So overall, again, the Perkins 5 report would help out with that. So in conclusion, then, uh, demand for preschool, elementary, middle, secondary, special education, CTE remains strong when you're looking at the exits due to retirement. They're leaving the workforce altogether, and those who are leaving teaching to get into a different industry. And then secondly, higher wages can attract more candidates, but budgets are tight. So school districts may benefit from sourcing teachers from other regions and also from using data such as from JobsEQ to show that if you really want a strong, um, if you want a strong or if you want a strong bench of teachers, that you need to pay more. And then finally, rich data are available from JobsEQ to provide information to help with curriculum alignment, to make sure that you're meeting the local business needs, and to look at the wage requirements to better align teacher salaries. So with that, let me send it back over to John to open us for questions.
Thanks, Chris. Just remind everybody on the call, there is a Q&A tool in Zoom. If you want to park any questions for either Chris or I, feel free to do that and we will go through them. Chris, I had a question when you had the Perkins 5 report. I think if I was a school leader, or even at the state level, if I was a director of CTE at a state level, that knowing the trends that you showed us out of that report around certain industries, either in decline or growing, would help inform schools about choosing which CTE programs they might want to offer. Is that how folks are using that tool?
Yes, exactly. Um, so yes, some of the other data that I showed you, in fact, all the data I showed you is from Jobs EQ. And so we can look at trends. You can put together reports to show your board or to show the supervisors. This is the trend. We're going to expect to continue to see demand for welders. We're going to continue to see demand for machinists and that type of thing, computer, CRM. So yes, exactly. That's the way that it's being used right now. And as a beginning step to put together your Perkins 5 report. So it's just one piece that allows you to quickly to complete for that Perkins 5 requirement.
Awesome. I will give appropriate wait time for folks if they want to give us a question. I guess the follow-up question to this is, um, CTE programs are typically can be quite expensive for school districts. That's why strategically choosing which ones are being offered is important. And I want to say that if you don't have an education career pathway program, a CTE program, developing future educators, it typically is about the cheapest CTE program you could offer. And if you are feeling the crunch of the teacher shortage in your community, offering a program like Educators Rising, in developing future educators, it goes hand in hand with school districts then offering those students who go through that pathway, who end up majoring in an education uh, degree, an award, as you said, they get that degree and they are then invited back by the district to teach for them. Schools are incentivizing that, and they're finding that um, bigger districts can spend upwards of $25,000 to market to each candidate. And if you think about that amount of money just to attract teachers to districts, especially in high need areas like special education or some secondary fields like STEM, uh, that's a lot of money. If you decide to put that money up front and develop a CTE program and you're inviting students to come back, many will have things like signing bonuses and other things to come back and work in their community, and they're therefore very familiar with the community and what it's like, and that's obviously a boon when you're hiring teachers who are familiar with the community. Well, we've got a question to come in.
Okay.
Uh,
Oh, quickly before that comes though,
yeah,
John, I just wanted to hop on some of what you said. Yes, CTE is an expensive, and that's why it's great to partner with some of the larger businesses. And so we've worked with some schools that have and community colleges where they said the businesses said there are plenty of machinists, but guess what? The machinists that you're providing to me can't work on my machines because you're training them on a machine that is 60 years old. So that particular company in this example went ahead and pitched in to buy the machine so that when the students were trained as a machinist and went to work for the firm, they were ready to hit the ground running. But sorry, back to you with the question.
yeah, yeah. So uh, one of our listeners wrote in and said, some districts are having a hard time understanding in terms of addressing the teacher shortage that a program like ours, an education career pathway program, is not an immediate fix. It's not like you're going to find 50 teachers next month. It is a long-term solution. It's one that eventually pays off because you're turning students onto the program. And again, very inexpensive to do that when you consider the amount of money that goes into attracting teachers. So one of the questions was if you could share the database link. Well, I will say JobsEQ is not a publicly available source of data, but the folks on the call may want to know would I get started with JobsEQ? Um, where can they learn more about it? Could you perhaps paste your URL in the chat for folks?
Sure. There is where you can go to learn more about Jobs EQ, or you can write to me, and I'd be glad to try to answer questions or point you in the right direction.
Uh,
Um, thank you.
yeah, and I'm going to put up our last couple slides here for folks who are interested in our program. We use this quote for a number of years. Illinois State Teacher of the Year became involved in the program, and her quote there speaks to the power of grow your own and developing teachers within your own community. Um, and so we like to share that quote. We have a lot of fans out there. Um, Another question came in. One of the challenges we hear from the school districts regarding teacher shortage is a lack of affordable housing.
Hmm.
I know some time ago, I was talking to folks up in Alaska and learned, because of the remote area in some of those districts, the districts actually provided housing, which for me, living in Central Virginia, that was kind of eye-opening. But um, the question is, curious if you have any data on folks that are providing that type of support, or how people assuage the fact that uh, making the salaries that you showed us in some of the areas that are really expensive to live in, what folks are doing about that.
One thing I'll jump in with, we've seen it happening more frequently, especially on the manufacturing side, where I mean, Tesla is one great example where he's putting in housing. Hospitals have started to do that. Um, and um, but and from a education point of view, we haven't seen that as much, or we haven't seen it at all. But that certainly is a great idea um, for people to consider having the municipality consider it. And I see here that Alex Doherty is writing. I don't see the link to Chmura Jobs EQ. Um, uh, Alex, can you go ahead and put the link in there since mine didn't seem to show up?
Uh, I think what we'll do is we'll send it out. We're gonna for everybody who signed up for this webinar, we'll send out a couple of things. We'll send links to each of our websites. We'll send a copy of today's presentation, and then a link to the recording if they want to share it with folks in their organizations. That way, you'll have everything in one place. For those that may be interested in jumping on Educators Rising, we have our social media. It's always at Educators Rising. We have a QR code there that goes to our page. If you're interested in how to start a chapter in your community, or interested in getting started talking to one of our engagement specialists around curriculum, you can write us at community@educatorsrising.org. Well, Chris, I appreciate the collaboration this afternoon in talking a little bit more about the education classification of jobs, what that looks like nationally compared to all jobs compared to those education jobs. Um, I think one of the things that our poll pointed out that you also showed us in your data is that we ought to be paying teachers more. I don't think any educator would argue with that. Of course, that's not easy to do at the local level, but certainly when you have the authority of data and can show that, maybe you can change some minds at the policy level, either at the state or national level. So I hope folks will use your tools, will use data to help paint that picture. For everybody that's joined us, thank you so much, and we hope to see you on a future webinar. For our organization, Educators Rising, if you go to our website, in the top right-hand corner, there is a link called GYO Webinars, Grow Your Own Webinars, and you can sign up for our future webinars. We have some exciting ones planned. And again, I want to thank our special guest today, Dr. Chris Chmura from Chmura Economics and Analytics in Richmond, Virginia. And we'll see you next time.